so here are some lightning questions. What is your favorite food?
Pasta.
What was your favorite subject in school?
Political science.
What was your childhood dream job?
Plastic surgeon.
We're gonna get started right now.
That's it? Come on, I want more lightning.
This is El Pino, and if you're from LA, you know about it. And even if you're not from LA, there's a good chance you know about this tree. That's because it was made famous in the Hollywood's blockbuster Blood In, Blood Out that was released in 1993, and its acting in that car chase was epic. Hollywood has ways of capturing our imagination and framing the reality for a people and a community we may know nothing about. And with that power, it can largely change the narrative. For my non-brown folks out there watching this, ask yourselves, who introduced you to us if you've never lived in our community, spent time with our families, or even had one of us as a close friend? More than likely, a Hollywood show or a movie. I've been interested in the power of narrative for some time, and especially interested in how it can be used as a tool for organizing and affect systems change, be it in healthcare, education, or justice reform. So today I'm bringing you out to Hollywood to sit and talk to executive producer of Just Mercy, Scott Budnick, to learn about his journey to Hollywood, activism, and so much more. Let's go.
So I grew up in Atlanta, Georgia, and I went to college. I thought I was going to be pre-med. I wanted to be a doctor. I'd seen this movie called The Elephant Man, and I wanted to help people, like as a plastic surgeon, help fix any kind of cosmetic or issues that they're having. And I ultimately went on a film set, and it was shooting in Atlanta. I went out there as an extra and met the director and started interning for the casting director, and just started going out and interning in Los Angeles every summer. My first internship was on Baywatch, 12 hours a day on the beach, and then at a talent agency. And so when I graduated from Emory University in 1999, I just drove straight out here and really could not find a job for 6 months. And it was getting to the point where I was about to lose my apartment. Every night was macaroni and cheese and ramen soup. And ultimately, the director, Todd Phillips, got hired to shoot a movie in Atlanta, my hometown, called Road Trip. And DreamWorks hired me to go out there and be a casting assistant and then his assistant on the movie. And that was the beginning of our 16-year relationship. I started out as a production assistant, then his assistant, and then started producing every movie since then, and ended up running his company. So all the Hangover films, Starsky and Hutch, Old School, War Dogs, Project X, we had a nice run for 16 years together.
When did you realize that making people laugh wasn't enough for you?
Well, when we were doing Old School in the early 2000s, I was invited to a juvenile hall in the San Fernando Valley and met 15 kids facing hundreds of years in prison, life in prison. The kid right next to me, David Negretti, looked like he was 14 years old. And I said, "How was your week?" And he said, "It was a really tough week. I just got sentenced to 300 years to life in prison." And that shocked me. I said, "What happened?" He said, "I stood next to my friend who shot the victim in the butt. David Negretti didn't even touch the gun, but for being next to him, victim was in and out of the hospital in a day. David got a 300-year to life sentence." And that's when I just realized how wrong, racist, and fucked up the system was. And ultimately, you're going to have to bleep out a lot of stuff here. Ultimately, I went around that table and heard all the stories, and they were just stories of all these kids being victims of adults before they ever went to victimize anybody. And I realized real quickly, if David had my skin tone and my money, he'd be out on bail, he wouldn't be sitting in that jail, and he'd have the best lawyer in LA, and he would get no time, maybe probation, for standing next to someone that shot someone, because David was brown and poor and experienced the foster care system. He was going to prison for 300 years to life, and that's something that I could not live in a city, a town, a country, a state that would do that to a child. I knew who I was at 15 years old was not who I was at 25 years old or 35 years old. So to say to a kid, you have no capability of changing and your only outcome is to die in prison was just completely unacceptable. So I dove in and started teaching that class every Saturday morning since 2004. I still do. And one other story, there was a kid named Adam in that class. And I remember the writing topic was about forgiveness. And he stood up with his hand shaking and he read this poem about his mom never being able to forgive him. And at the end of class, he said, "Can I get your number? Because I'm going to need to get a job and make my mom proud when I come home." And I gave him my number. And literally, we are in production on The Hangover. He calls, says, "I'm out." I said, "You have an internship, $12 an hour. Show up at 6 in the morning and work your ass off." And Adam shows up at 3 in the morning, beats everybody to work, attitude of gratitude, works his butt off. And at the end of it, our prop master says, "You've done an unbelievable job. I'm going to bring you to Iron Man." Adam left, got into the union, and now makes $42 an hour, time and a half after 8, double time after 12. Him and his 5 brothers who now followed him are now pulling in $100,000 to $150,000 a year. And so I just led that double life.
Before your first visit with young people serving life in prison, what was your perception of the incarcerated community?
I mean, I always knew, like, I'm someone that from like the day I was born, there's something about injustice that like makes my blood boil. And there's something about racism that makes me crazy. And I grew up in Atlanta, and I'll be real honest, I don't remember meeting anybody Latino till I moved out to LA. Like, it was white and black in Atlanta during the times that I was there. And then ultimately moved out to LA and was introduced to this incredible Latinx culture, right? And that really kind of changed everything for me. And it's through that I realized just how unjust the system was, how racism and racial bias played a role in the system. I mean, in that juvenile hall that I've gone to for the last almost 20 years, 98% are black and brown. Once in a blue moon, you had a white kid in that juvenile hall. And it was just super clear. Those aren't the demographics of the city. So there was something very wrong. There was something that was really taking advantage of poor, powerless people. And I realized that I had a bit of a platform. I was not a celebrity, but through the movie business, I had a bit of a platform to make a bit of a difference. So I just jumped in.
After your first visit, you made the commitment that if they were willing to transform their lives, you'd be willing to be by their side. And till this day, you continue to show up for them through the writing class, legislative advocacy, and by literally picking them up and giving them a ride once they're released from prison. Why is it important for you to continue to show up for them, literally?
Well, since starting ARC, the Anti-Recidivism Coalition, like, I'm not someone that can just work in policy work and not be there with the people, right? Like, where I feel the most content, where I find the most useful, where I find myself the most inspired is sitting in a prison with the people. So don't get me wrong, I love making movies. I love doing political advocacy and going to Sacramento and walking the halls of the Capitol, but you won't see me in the Capitol without a few or a dozen formerly incarcerated folks with me, because I realized real quickly that the power in this is not me speaking. Power is in me listening and giving people that access to power. And people ask me, like, these young people that are incarcerated ask me all the time, like, why do you do this? Why do you care so much? And I say to them, like, don't think this is selfless. I'm not being selfless. Like, I believe I get more out of this than you guys do. Like, this is, I started this morning on a 2-hour hike with 3 people who I knew when they were incarcerated, young people, and they're 20, 21, 22 years old, one of whom was facing 100 years to life in prison, And then Prop 57 got him back to juvenile court. And then a bill that we at ARC and Human Rights Watch, Elizabeth Calvin did, Frankie Guzman and others, called SB 1391, stopped DAs from being able to try 14 and 15-year-olds as adults. And because he was 15 at the time of the crime, he was released 3 weeks ago, and I want to hike with him, his first hike ever, this morning. So to me, it's like I can't be in the clouds and I can't be in the politics and the policy without always being one with the people, because that's where I feel like I learn the most, and that's what inspires me the most.
Can you tell us about the impact that the Anti-Recidivism Coalition has had?
I mean, I think the impact of ARC is in like a few different areas. I think one is, in its simplest form, it's a support group for people coming out of prison with people that are all kind of pushing in a positive direction, right? To surround people with folks that are rowing in that direction. I think secondly, all the resources people need when they come home, whether it be housing, mentorship, placement into careers, college, etc., therapy. I think that's incredibly important. I think what we do just to like change the narrative on who a formerly incarcerated person is or who's currently incarcerated, right? I think that is huge, because most people who are just ignorant, not racist, but just sitting in their homes and ignorant, don't know anyone in the system, have a view of what someone looks like, all tatted up and dangerous, et cetera. And when you meet folks in the system, you realize that's not the truth at all. So being able to change that narrative is key. And then obviously the policy work. We've been able to pass over 26 bills that affected tens of thousands of people in prison, 26,000 people that were sentenced to die in prison, as young people now have the chance to come home. I mean, that to me is the most fun. We opened our Sacramento office and learned a lot from our friends at Brown Issues and saw how you guys organized and mobilized and found ways to partner with you and want to partner with you guys more. It's been great, but like I'm not ever satisfied. Like I want to do more. I can't go into prisons and see people that have life without parole and they said I have no chance to ever come home and not want to fight for them.
In a past interview, you've mentioned that entertainment and culture are one of the most powerful tools one can have when it comes to advancing social impact. This led you to create One Community. Can you share more about that?
Yeah, I mean, I left the film business for 5 years to start ARC, and it was by far the best 5 years of my life. Like getting paid 90% less, leaving any type of power whatsoever, but like my heart was full every day, and everyone came out of the woodwork at that point to support. So even though I could do nothing for anybody in the entertainment business, the Kim Kardashians and Commons and J. Cole's and John Legends come to partner. Patty Jenkins, who directed Wonder Woman, just like incredible people coming together to like partner in this work. But I think what changed for me was I met a guy who like led the political movement for marriage equality. And I asked him, like, what was the game-changing moment that led you to legalize gay marriage where it was fully illegal in every state before that, and it's not even a political issue anymore? And without missing a beat, he looks at me and says, Will and Grace, and Glee, and Modern Family, and Ellen DeGeneres, and Brokeback Mountain, and Milk. Like culture that happened over that decade softened people's hearts, had them stop clutching their Bibles so hard, made them soften opposition, made them support whatever it may be, and just created a whole different landscape for political change, right? And I think it's those stories. Brian Stevenson, who wrote Just Mercy, always says you got to bring people proximate to the issue. They have to see the issue. They have to touch issues. They have to meet the human beings. And so I don't think there's anybody that I know on the planet. And I grew up around very conservative religious people in Atlanta. Like I knew for a fact that even though they were opposed to gay marriage, if they met a gay couple that were in love, sat at a dinner table and broke bread with a gay couple, they would change the way that they saw it, and they would change the way they voted for it. And I honestly believe very strongly that like all human issues through proximity can be changed. And I think the one we're gonna see next is our immigration system. Like I think some of the rhetoric from the right on illegals and the way they do dehumanize people, most people cannot dehumanize someone that they know. Most people cannot dehumanize somebody that they have a relationship with. And so I'm really trying to think about, through culture, through movie, through film, through TV, through digital, through doc, like how through storytelling can we continue to lift up the incredible story of immigrants. And just like we got rid of this kind of anti-marriage equality sentiment, we could do the same with this anti-immigrant sentiment.